What is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with a conversation, a soapbox sermon, if you will, on the Brooklyn Nets. Before we get started, please remember to continue rating and reviewing and subscribing wherever you consume us. If you're on YouTube, hit the sub button, like, comment, help the algorithm love us back. We have a lot of fun around here. Join our Discord, follow us on the socials. All those links are in our podcast and YouTube descriptions. And subscribe to the actual podcast from a podcast player and download every episode. Cross subscribing will help us a ton. So get on your phone, use Apple and Spotify, Google, Stitcher, whatever you use, the whole nine to subscribe and download every episode, and then continue to follow along on YouTube. We do post exclusives on TikTok, IG, YouTube as well from time to time. But I think with that, it's time to talk about the Brooklyn Nets. They've had some better games. Their loss to the Mavericks on Thursday night was encouraging in many ways with the aggression you saw from Kyrie, even some Ben Simmons moments, but they have a Ben Simmons problem, and it was really underscored during that Bucks loss. Early in the third quarter of that Wednesday night loss to Milwaukee, Kyrie attempted to distill what the team needs from Ben Simmons down to 3 words. Shoot it, Ben. Brevity can lack context, and Kyrie doesn't take the time to stop, break the fourth wall, and explain into the camera everything else the Nets need from Simmons. He's also not wrong. Simmons was 2 of 7 from the floor in Milwaukee and 3 of 7 versus Dallas, and is now 12 of 27 from the floor on the season. The loss to the Bucks specifically marked the second time this year Simmons finished with at least as many fouls as points. He has tallied now 28 points against 22 fouls through his 5 games. And the Nets have been outscored by a total of 42 points during his minutes on the floor. That's the 6th worst mark in the league among 120 players who have logged as many minutes so far. Of course, the 2 most important words in that previous sentence might just be 5 games. That sample size is nothing. Early season stats get warped every night. Plus minus in particular isn't always telltale. KD owns the 2nd worst mark in the league from that 120 player group I just referenced. Leeway needs to be given. Simmons is still working through his return from back surgery, a 16-month-long absence, and a well-documented yet poorly covered mental health struggle. Players don't always return to previous form, and Simmons also tweaked his back in that one game against the Bucks. We saw him on the bike, riding it on the sidelines when he wasn't in the game to stay loose. Kyrie, once again, eloquently noted this after Brooklyn's loss to Milwaukee. He didn't need to address it after the loss to Dallas. He said, "You guys keep coming in here asking me, like, what about Ben? He hasn't played in 2 years. Give him a fucking chance. We stay on his shit. You just stay on him, but we're here to give him positive affirmations." Does screaming, "Shoot it, Ben," while waving your arms and jumping up in apparent exasperation count as positive affirmation? Who's to say? I'm not trolling this. I'm trolling him either. I did not interpret Kyrie's reaction to Simmons looking off a layup in favor of a KD jumper as ironclad support. But Kyrie deserves nothing less than the benefit of the doubt after that little quote. Dropping F-bombs is proof of positive affirmation in my book. Still, Simmons has been a problem for the Nets at both ends, and it's okay to say that. Citing facts is not akin to personal attacks or declaring his career over. Maybe he needs more time, but at this exact moment, his play is an issue. The defense should be fine, and we even saw that at points with the Mavericks. That turnover he was able to force off a double, going to double Luka, was just vintage Ben and being able to create an opportunity for the Nets then in transition. Overall, though, Simmons is not defending with the same circular, unaltering explosion and force, and has committed some ticky-tack fouls, sometimes seemingly out of frustration or just disinterest in getting back in transition. To his credit, he's also needed to guard some pretty large humans early on. Giannis, Zion Williamson, Jonas Valanciunas. The Mavs did a good job of making him avoid reps against Luka Doncic. But these are assignments he's taking on after such a long absence. It's tough. It's tough. It's just tough. Rumor has it when you're fully healthy, defending those guys can be tough. A fairly large chunk of Simmons' fouls are also coming on the offensive end. That's either an aberration in the face of unfamiliar usage for him, a slight concern, or maybe it's both. Paint me free from panic on defense for now. Simmons should get healthier and work his way back into game shape. More than that, the Nets, as currently constructed, don't seem built to optimize how he best defends, not even with Nicholas Claxton on the floor. That's a problem, but not necessarily a Simmons problem. His offense is a different story. Relative passivity warrants plenty of panic. The lack of aggression we're seeing now is not rooted solely in his absence and recovery from injury. It's an extension of the warts he's always hinted at, the same ones that seemed to mushroom leading up to what became his final game and hallmark moment with the Philadelphia 76ers. Playing Simmons with non-shooters up front has always been a no-go. Who among us wasn't traumatized from his minutes with Dwight Howard in 2020, 2021? The Nets are predominantly slotting him beside non-shooting bigs anyway, and their offense is paying the price. They got away from it over their past couple games. Day'Ron Sharpe didn't even play in their loss to the Mavericks. But in the 87 minutes Simmons and Claxton have logged together this season, Brooklyn's offensive rating sits at a not-so-robust 103.4. And that mark has plunged to 92.1 when Simmons sets up shop beside Day'Ron Sharpe. And yes, when you go back and watch these minutes, the Nets look just as clumpy as the numbers would suggest. Part of this might just be on the offensive structure. The Nets, even when he's the big, he won't even be listed as the big, but the Nets are not having Simmons initiate a ton of pick and rolls with Claxton or Sharpe. And anytime he spends off the ball in the half court is largely moot when Claxton and Sharpe generally need to occupy the same space, or at least they're not enough of threats from the outside for defenders to occupy different spaces. They're going to be able to close up gaps and just seal off cuts to the basket if you want to go through with a KD post up. Playing Simmons without a big is a trendy hypothetical solution. I'm going to still emphasize hypothetical here. The Nets haven't leaned on it a ton before their past two games. Simmons logged just 12 possessions outside garbage time without Claxton or Sharpe on the court prior to that Bucks loss. Brooklyn, though, like I said, did give those arrangements a more thorough look against the Bucks and the Mavs, and it sort of worked. The lineups finished as a net plus overall, and that setup, when you look at the game against Milwaukee with Simmons let's call him Simmons without a big, not Simmons as the lone big. They went on a 10-0 run, I think, to close out the half and really make that a game against Milwaukee and put them on the ropes. Simmons without a big lineups are worth further exploration by default then, because what else are the Nets supposed to do? They still can't be viewed as a cure-all. Screening and rolling is not Simmons' natural state, and the Nets have not meaningfully attempted to use him in that vein. They should try more of it, to be sure, especially in pick and rolls with Kyrie or KD, please. But this type of usage is largely foreign for Simmons and has never been considered a potential strength. More problematic than anything, though, is Simmons' general lack of aggression. He's averaging 6.3 shot attempts per 36 minutes. That's about half of what he averaged prior to this season for his career. His drives are, not surprisingly, down amid all this. He went from averaging 11.3 drives per game per 11.3 drives per 36 minutes in 2020, 2021 to 6.4 right now with Brooklyn. Some of this can once more be traced back to his getting displaced from the ball on Brooklyn. But even his quality moments don't feel the same. Most of his assists aren't coming deep into paint penetration. He's throwing pitch passes or completing handoffs from above the free throw line. He's getting rid of the ball early in transition, which, to be fair, isn't necessarily sinister. Maybe this changes in time. Maybe the Nets need to scour the trade market for a stretch big, shout out Miles Turner, shout out Mo Bamba, to streamline Simmons' defensive role and open up the half court on offense. Maybe this is just an overreaction to 5 games. Whatever this is, though, doesn't change what Brooklyn needs from Simmons in the coming days and weeks and months to come. And that's to cease towing the line of offensive invisibility. Let me know what you think in the comments, in the mentions, depending on where you're consuming this. Remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and the podcast players. Appreciate every single one of you. Until next time, I leave you to shout out to the one, the only, the person who could actually solve and fix everything wrong with the Lakers, Frank Ntilikina.